Our top story this half an hour, President Trump announcing Brett Kavanaugh as his nominee to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court. Joining me right now is Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. Senator, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. What do you think of the president's choice?
I think it's a good choice. We'll walk through the process and try to be able to look at all of his background, all of his opinions, things that he's written for a very long time, and go through it step by step. But it seems to be a good choice on its face, someone with great experience and background.
Will he be able to get the votes in the Senate?
Well, ask me that in about 2 months, and we'll get this resolved. It should take about a month and a half to get through Judiciary Committee, then another couple of weeks to be able to get across the floor, so we'll work through it. I think he should be able to have a fair vote up or down on it, and we'll walk through the process of doing the evaluation from here on out.
Senator, I know that there is that process that you just mentioned, but early stages here, there's a statement out that I'm looking at from your ailing colleague, Senator McCain, who's occasionally been a thorn in the side of the president. He calls this pick mainstream, fair, and talking about the impeccable credentials of Brett Kavanaugh. Does that sort of endorsement from John McCain perhaps give some cover for moderates in both parties to rally around this nomination?
I would think every person's going to have to make their own evaluation on it. Obviously, Senator McCain has spoken out on these issues for a very long time as a member of the Senate and is an important member of the Senate still. Though we haven't seen him on the Senate floor since early December, he still speaks and has a very loud voice. But at the end of the day, each of us are going to be able to look at this candidate and say, is he going to follow the law? And that should be the most straightforward question of it. Not does he have preferences and he's going to impose those preferences on the American people. Is he going to follow the law? And his initial statement last night was that's the focus of a judge, is to follow the law. Have
you spoken with your colleagues, Senator Collins or Murkowski?
I have not spoken about that since last night, so we'll get a chance to see them today and get a chance to be able to visit some. But I would assume that they're going to sit down and visit with Judge Kavanaugh, ask him some straightforward questions personally, and be able to walk through the process like everyone else.
Senator, we want to also talk to you about trade. We've been having a conversation about it all morning. Both Tesla and BMW are now raising prices of its cars in China due to the tariffs that were put in place. Are we in danger of putting the strong economy at risk over a potential trade war?
I think this is an issue that needs to be resolved because we do have an exceptionally strong economy with a great job market at this point. And if we put that at risk by having a tariff fight back and forth, that does hurt us long term and hurts American workers. So whether you're in ag products right now facing tariffs from Mexico on pork products, or whether you're dealing with wheat, or whether you're dealing with cars and steel and aluminum, this is a big issue that needs to be resolved. None of us want to see a tariff fight or a trade war. We want to be able to see these issues resolved, obviously to be fair for the American workers long term. But this is a set of issues that has gone on a long time now. So we need to try to get it resolved.
Do you agree with the aluminum and steel tariffs then?
I don't agree with how they were used. I don't see it as a national security issue. I do see us trying to resolve the steel aluminum issues, especially the steel issues with actors like China and Turkey that have certainly been trying to be able to undercut the American market and supported with their government fighting against our private industry. That's got to be resolved. There are issues in NAFTA that have to be resolved with Mexico and Canada. But all these negotiations happening simultaneously, whether it's the EU or Asia or Canada and Mexico, at some point we've got to start resolving some of these, getting them settled.
I hear you use the phrase, Senator, has to be resolved, and a number of times there just over the last minute or two. How do we get from where we are now to where you want to be? Because, you know, just observing this and talking to people who have been observing it, it seems like there's a ways to go here, especially on the Chinese side, before we get to any sort of a resolution. How do we get there?
So you take it the same way you take any kind of debt or any kind of other issue. Take your smallest issue first, get that resolved, then put all the effort on the second one and keep going it from there. If we're going to try to resolve all these trade issues that we have worldwide at this point, try to resolve the most straightforward ones first, whether we with Mexico or with Canada or with South Korea, whoever it may be. I would think NAFTA would be one of the first ones. It's one of the first ones that was opened. It should be the closest one to actually getting resolved. Get that one resolved, get issues with South Korea resolved, get the easiest ones done first, and then continue to be able to work through the process for the hardest.
Is it easier after the new president was elected in Mexico?
Well, you know what? We don't know yet. Okay. He's not in office at this point, and it'll be several months before he is in office. We'll find out in the days ahead. I'd like to see Mexico resolve. Mexico is a very significant trade partner for us, and had been a long-term ally, so that needs to be resolved.
Here's John Hilsner.
Senator, what are you hearing from constituents back home about the tariffs and the retaliation that's hitting American farmers and other American industries? Are they behind the president on this, or are they starting to feel the pain and wondering if this is a war they want to fight?
they are certainly behind the president, but they are absolutely feeling the pain as well. They want to know how everything's going to be settled in the days ahead, because they've got seed in the ground right now. They don't know if they have a buyer for long term, or if the buyer that they thought they had is going to break contract and go with some other country, some other place. If you're doing pork right now, you're very uncertain what's going to happen with tariffs with ham in Mexico, and how much you're going to have to swallow in this process rather than actually get a chance to sell. So there are a lot of issues that are out there.
So how deep is that reservoir of support? Do you think at some point Americans, your own constituents, say this isn't a fight that we're winning and we don't want to be in it?
I think that's the great unknown, how long that's going to be. I'm going to tell you, in agriculture areas, they are on the razor's edge at this point. They don't have a lot of margin.
Hold on,
commodity
Senator.
prices are down.
Senator, hold on. We want to talk, get this. The president just made these comments. Stay with us. We'll come right back.
It's certainly going to be an interesting time with NATO. NATO has not treated us fairly, but I think we'll work something out. We pay far too much, and they pay far too little. But we will work it out, and all countries will be happy. The UK, that's a situation that's been going on for a long time. So I have NATO, I have the UK, which is in somewhat turmoil, and I have Putin. Frankly, Putin may be the easiest of them all. Who would think? Who would think? But the UK certainly has they have a lot of things going on.
Have you talked to Theresa May since Boris Johnson left? Have you been?
I have not. No, I have not. But Boris Johnson's a friend of mine. He's been very, very nice to me, very supportive. And maybe we'll speak to him when I get over there. I like Boris Johnson. I've always liked him.
Should Theresa May remain in power?
Well, that's up to the people. I get along with her very well. I have a very good relationship. That's certainly up to the people, not up to me.
On NATO, Donald Tusk, about a half an hour ago, said that you should appreciate America's allies because you don't have very many. What do you say?
Well, we do have a lot of allies, but we cannot be taken advantage of. We're being taken advantage of by the European Union. We lost $151 billion last year on trade. And on top of that, we spend at least 70% for NATO. And frankly, it helps them a lot more than it helps us. So we'll see what happens. We have a long, beautiful week. I will say also, last night was an incredible evening. Brett Kavanaugh has gotten rave reviews, actually from both sides. And I think it's going to be a beautiful thing to watch over the next month. But he has gotten rave reviews.
Mr. President, would you say Vladimir Putin is a friend or a foe?
I really can't say right now. As far as I'm concerned, a competitor. I think that getting along with Russia, getting along with China, getting along with others is a good thing, not a bad thing. I've said that many times for many years. So we'll see. We're meeting with Vladimir Putin on Monday. We'll see how that goes. They didn't give it. I have it for him. They didn't give it, but it will be given at a certain period. I actually do have a little gift for him, but you'll find out what that gift is when I give it. No, I haven't. I really haven't. We haven't discussed.
Mr. President, the government's not going to be able to meet the deadlines for returning children.
Well, I have a solution. Tell people not to come to our country illegally. That's the solution. Don't come to our country illegally. Come like other people do. Come legally.
Mr. President,
I'm saying this very simply. We have laws, we have borders. Don't come to our country illegally. It's not a good thing. And as far as ICE is concerned, the people that are fighting ICE, it's a disgrace. These people go into harm's way. There is nobody under greater danger than the people from ICE. What they do to MS-13 and everything else. So we ought to support ICE, not do what the Democrats are doing. Democrats want open borders, and they don't mind crime. We want no crime, and we want borders where borders mean something. Right? And remember this, without borders, you do not have a country. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. President.
The president speaking to reporters just moments ago as he boards his plane to go to Brussels and the NATO meeting. We're with Senator Lankford this morning. Senator, the president just talked about his trip to NATO. What are you expecting in terms of moving the needle on what was one of the president's big issues in terms of spending on defense?
Yeah, that's been an issue not just under this president, but that's as far back as Eisenhower and Kennedy and Nixon. They all made public statements that NATO needs to step up and actually fulfill their obligations. NATO has said over and over again they need to do more. And quite frankly, in the last 18 months, NATO has started stepping up and actually paying more for national defense. So there has been some movement there. Like to be able to see them finish that. The president is correct that we pay the bulk of what happens for NATO defense, though it's more significant for Europe than it is for the United States defense. So NATO needs to be able to step up and fulfill its obligations. It's pretty straightforward.
And the president just mentioned his meeting with Vladimir Putin is going to happen on Monday. You sit on the Senate committee that looked into the Russia probe. What are your expectations for this meeting with Vladimir Putin?
Well, it's hard to be able to read. Vladimir Putin is a tough character to be able to read, but there's no question he's not our friend. He's not our ally. When the president said he's a competitor in this, that we are going to sit down with him as a competitor, I think is a good way to be able to see it. He is against Western values. He's against NATO. He's against the expansion of the United States and what we're trying to do to be able to bring some stability worldwide. He's bringing instability worldwide. So this is a big issue. We should talk about Syria. We should talk about relationships with Turkey. We should talk about some of the key issues that we've got to deal with trade. So we'll see where this goes. But the president has that first responsibility to be the face of the nation worldwide.
Senator, you heard the end there, a few comments from President Trump on immigration. It seemed like, a week or two ago that the #1 issue dominating our attention was the separation of families and children at the border. And I know that the Senate was working on some legislation to address that problem and also the catch and release issue that many conservatives don't like. You were part of that effort. Has that gone anywhere? What's the status?
Yeah, it is not finished. That is still a work in progress. You can go all the way back to February of this year where we had 4 different bills dealing with this issue, including this what's called the Flores settlement. None of those passed. I would hope that after 4 of them all failed to get full support of 60, then we would be able to go the next week to be able to have a combined document. That didn't happen. Now there's conversation again in the last couple of weeks about it. That's not happened. We've got to be able to get a coalition. This is something that's dogged president since 1997 when the Flores decision started. This has to be resolved long term.
And that happens maybe after the midterm elections? What's your timeline?
I would hope that it happens before. Right now, it didn't happen in February and early March because the court stepped in and said, we want to take a look at it. And so the Senate backed off on it. At some point, the court is going to step in and say, OK, we've taken a look at it, and now they're going to put it back into our lap, and they're going to expect it to be resolved the next week. My focus is we're going to just keep working on the legislation. Let's keep working on getting an answer. Let's keep building the coalition to get this resolved. We're really not that far apart on several of the issues. Let's resolve what we can get resolved. But the challenge has been for decades this has hung over Congress, and Congress has not fulfilled it. We've got to get this done.
All right. And I saw you in the chamber last night when the president made the announcement. We'll end where we began. Do you think you're going to have this new justice in place by the time the Supreme Court starts its new term on October 1?
There's no reason we shouldn't have that. Gorsuch was done in 66 days. Sotomayor was done in 66 days from the time of the announcement. There's no reason that this justice can't be in place by October the 1st.
Senator, it's good to see you. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Senator James Lankford joining us there. Coming up.